Good day, YouTube. You're watching AGK's Vinyl Life. I am Anthony K, and today is March 2nd, 2020. And this, I guess, is my first official vinyl showing video. Last week I did my intro and room tour and a special unboxing video. And so today I'm going to start with vinyl, because that's what I said I was going to show, and that's what I'm going to show. And today's vinyl records that I'm going to show are the first records I ever owned in my life. They are the reason I became a record collector. They are things that go back to when I was 12, 13 years old. This is when I first discovered music. My earliest memory of records was my sister with her 45s and playing records, and she had K-Tel albums and things like that. So why did I get into music? What got me into music? How did I get into music? How did I get into records? Well, at that time, I was in I'm guessing grade 6, grade 7, somewhere around there. I know it was 1972, my first record I bought, because I've got it right here. But at the time, being a kid, not really into music yet, I had other things I was watching and following and doing as a kid. And one of those things was James Bond movies. Yes, I remember my father bringing me home a model James Bond Aston Martin. I still have to this day, which is apparently worth a fortune. A corgi car to play with. And in 1971, on my birthday, took me to see Diamonds Are Forever, Sean Connery's final film in the original Broccoli films. Diamonds Are Forever, which had a huge impact on me, this super spy. One thing that stuck out was the opening title sequences with the girls dancing around, and the wild visuals and the bombastic songs, and of course the music, the big band, big brassy sound of the James Bond theme and 007 theme, and all these themes exploding on the screen with the action. So I became a huge Bond fan, and to this day I'm still a huge Bond fan. But the music of the James Bond films really impacted me, and I absolutely loved Diamonds Are Forever. And in that year, that was 71, and in that year I actually saw the previous 6 Bond films that were filmed before that: Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But yeah, the music, because I saw all these 7 Bond films in one year as a young boy, they impacted me huge, and the music of these films really impacted me. And so I remember going to Hudson Bay. There was a Hudson Bay store, the Bay Company, Hudson Bay, very close to my house. Very first record I ever bought was this one right here, Hudson Bay, and it was this right here, James Bond 10th anniversary album Super Pack. And this is the exact same album right here, my very first record I ever owned in my life. I've kept it as best as possible over all these years, and this was the first thing I ever owned. And it was basically a collection of, it's like a greatest hits pack of all of the previous films right up to Diamonds Are Forever. And of course I jumped on this, saw it there in the Hudson Bay, and it came on this United Artists. And you can even see right here, and I did this from day one. All my records from day one. I don't do it anymore, but back in the day, in the 70s, I used to write the date and my initials on the records. So if you look really close right there, you can see AGK. I was even AGK back then. Look at that. AGK 72. So there you have it. First record I ever owned in my life. Initialed on the year I bought it, and I did that all through the years. Always wrote an initial on there. And that was it. This introduced me to music. James Bond music. Now you were probably thinking, oh, Anthony's going to show some Led Zeppelin or something. No. Right here, first record I owned in my life, James Bond. So thank you, John Barry, because all the music on here was done by John Barry. Thank you, John Barry, for introducing me to the wonderful world of music. Without this album, who knows if I would have ever gotten into music. And that was my very first record. My very first record. From there, like I said, I was listening to AM radio. So being a kid, and I think this cost, I don't know, this maybe cost $3.99, $4.99, something like that. It was a big deal. I had to ask my parents for money for this one because I really wanted this because of my love of James Bond. So I couldn't afford things like that. But with the allowance and things I did get, I would go to the Hudson Bay and occasionally downtown with my parents or whatever to Sam the Record Man. But mostly the Hudson Bay. Thank you, the Hudson Bay, for having a record department back in those days, because you guys got me started on music because you were the closest to my house. But as I couldn't afford really albums or anything, being a kid and getting allowance, I bought singles. Yeah, singles. Singles were anywhere from 40, 50 cents to 99 cents as the years went on. Through the 70s, you could buy a single, meaning a 45 RPM, 7-inch single, for anywhere from 40 cents to $1. In the 80s, they started to go up to, $1.50, $2, $3, whatever. So with my allowance, I would buy 45s. Now, of course, I don't have all my 45s I had back then. A lot of them some got sold, lost, stolen, whatever. Like I remember having Led Zeppelin, Whole Lotta Love, Backed with Living, Loving Maid. Led Zeppelin, Immigrant Song, Backed with something, I don't remember what it was. I had those. But I do have a few of them still that I bought way back in the day. And these are all bought originally by me when they came out at the time. And so here we go. Let's look at some 45s. So I used to buy these, like I said, they were anywhere from 40 cents to 99 cents. And these are kind of the earliest 45s I still own that got me into music. So here we have Deep Purple. And this was a double, this was released like 1970, 71, but I bought it, 40 cents, 50 cents, and it was basically Kentucky Woman and Hush by Deep Purple, double A-side, kind of a reissue single, very popular. And these are songs, like I said, I used to listen to 1050 Chum, which played all the hits, and they used to have what was called the Chum Chart. And the Chum Chart was something you could pick up at any record store, Hudson Bay, Sam the Record Man, A&A's, Sunrise, Music World, whatever. And it was a little brochure type thing. I wish I had one to show you. It was a little brochure thing that said 1050 Chum on the front, had a picture, and it was this week's top 30. It was the Chum top 30. And it was listed, inside. You'd open it up inside with the top 30 hits, showed last week's position, this week's position, so on. And I would use that Chum Chart and to find out the names and to buy singles. So Deep Purple. Next single here. And of course, Deep Purple would go on to become one of my favorite bands of all time. I guess a lot of these were because they were the first singles I ever owned. So next, and I do these videos in one take, so bear with me. Another single, Alice Cooper, School's Out, backed with Gutter Cat, 1972. Great single. This single got me into Alice Cooper, one of my biggest favorite bands of all time, performers of all time, whatever you want to say. So this single right here started me on my road with Alice Cooper. Moving along, Brownsville Station, Smokin' in the Boys' Room, backed with Barefootin'. And this, I believe, was 1973. Yeah, so it's 1972, 73. 72, I only remember buying the one album, the James Bond album. And then it was into singles. I was into singles. 1972, 73, buying singles because they were so cheap. The only thing I could afford. Until like mid-73 when I started to get a little more money and this and that and started buying albums. But for a long time, it was mostly singles. Original. These are all originals that I purchased back in the day. They all still play great. I kind of always took care of my records. So there you go. Smoking in the Boys' Room. And here's another one for you. Donovan, Atlantis, and To Susan on the West Coast Waiting. What else do we have here? We have, on MGM, we have Signs. 5-man electrical band. And this was another one that was on the Mold and Oldies reissue. So I thought it was great when you got a double A side in those days. So this had Absolutely Right and Signs, Signs, Everywhere a Sign. Signs, Five Man Electrical Man. Now, this single, 1973. This single would precede an album by a group that would be probably one of my top 3 bands of all time that I have followed right up to this day. In fact, I got their latest release a couple days ago from Amazon. I followed this band. This band has 26 studio albums. That's a lot of albums. Multiple live albums. But this single here, 1973, would start me on the road to absolutely loving this band. And this band is Golden Earring. And this single here, Radar Love. Radar Love from 1973, backed with Just Like Vince Taylor. Golden Earring. You'll be seeing lots more Golden Earring on my channel in days to come. But there it is, 1973. 6 months later, they would release Moontan, which would go on to become my love of Golden Earring. Golden Earring. Radar Love. Now, this one here. This is interesting. Take a good look at that cover. This is Santana. Hence, Santana. This single on Columbia, One Eye. Santana, No One to Depend On. Taboo from Santana 3. And what's interesting about this is it had a custom sleeve made by A&A Records. Yeah, A&A Records custom sleeve. And it says on it, if you didn't read, Santana in concert, Maple Leaf Gardens, February 20th. So they were promoting Santana coming to town. So they sleeved their latest single in this A&A Records, which was one of the best places to shop for records. Sam the Record Man, A&A Records, they were the places to shop in Toronto for records. So they put it in this sleeve. So I was like, rush this Santana single home and lend it an ear. When you want more of the same, return this printed sleeve to an A&A record store, and any Santana album is yours for $3.69. Offer good until February 22nd. Can you believe that? So that's crazy. So there you go. You could get an album for $3.69 with, if you trade it in this sleeve, any Santana album back in the day. And this is like 1972, 73, 72, 72. Here you go. Santana. Another one. Now we're getting into 73. Most of these are from 73, or I bought them in 73 or 72 or 73, even though they might have come out in 73, 72, 71, 69, whatever. The Joker, Steve Miller Band. Backed with Something to Believe In, from title track from the Joker album. Next up, now this is, the reason I bought this was because of the James Bond album. One of the songs on that James Bond album was Tom Jones singing the title track to Thunderball. So one day I'm in the record store, and look at this. It's even still got the price tag on it. 39 cents. You know what this is? On Parrot Records. Tom Jones. It's not unusual. The Carlton song. Yeah, it's not unusual. Tom Jones. I bought it because Tom Jones sang Thunderball. And there it is on Parrot Records. Next up, Silver Spotlight Series. This was a 1972 release of a 1970 and 71 song. And it was the Silver Spotlight Series by United Artists. I loved the song. Green Eyed Lady by Sugarloaf. Next up, also I believe from 73, yeah. On Capitol Records, The Sweet Ballroom Blitz. Another classic, Sweet's Ballroom Blitz. And last up for the 45s that I'm going to show today, because like I said, these were all 45s that I bought back in the day originally. And this was another, this was a Motown Yesteryear series from like 1972. And this was Stevie Wonder, Higher Ground, backed with You Are the Sunshine of My Life, Stevie Wonder. So here you have it, some of the first singles I ever owned in my life. 7-inch singles. Now we move on to albums. So this next album, probably, I think, I don't know if it's the second or third album I ever owned. It was a long time ago. I bought this because of the cover and became a big fan of the Beach Boys because of it, and owned other Beach Boys records. But I got this because I absolutely had a crush on the girl on the cover of this album. It's crazy. And even to this day, I look at it and I think back of being a young boy again. But it was a Pickwick recording, so it wasn't even an original Beach Boys. It was a compilation of Beach Boys music. And I love this album. I really do. I love this album. All the songs are great. And Surfer Girl, it will always be my favorite Beach Boys song. Always. Surfer Girl. And it was probably because of the Surfer Girl on the cover of this album. But yeah, here we have it. Beach Boys. Pickwick version of Surfer Girl. I love this girl. Just I just went gaga for this record when I saw the cover. And Surfer Girl to this day is just sentimental to me. Pickwick Records, Surfer Girl, a classic. So next I had this one here, which is the next thing I'm going to show. I actually had on cassette. My father had this Philips cassette recorder. Cassette recorders had just been kind of invented and were coming in 1972. And like I said, just about all these first ones I'm showing you all came from the Hudson Bay. And they had a little small cassette tape department, and I had a couple tapes. The one tape I had, which I don't have anymore, was Neil Diamond's Stones, and that sort of got me a little bit into Neil Diamond. But another one I got that got eaten by a cassette deck over a few years later. But then I ended up getting on vinyl record, was this album here, which was probably my first introduction into real heavy rock. I mean, other than the singles I showed you, this was kind of my first LP, rock LP. And to this day, probably my all-time favorite song to this day of any songs is All Along the Watchtower. And the album is Jimi Hendrix Experience Smash Hits. And this is my original first time I bought on vinyl. And I don't know, I may get some comments about this, but this was on Reprise Records, not Reprise. Everybody I ever knew in my life called this Reprise. In fact, phonetically, if you read it, it says Reap, Rise, Rise. I don't see anywhere where it says E's there. There's no E in it. There's no E sound in the spelling of that. As far as I know, and you might all bitch at me in the comments later and say, yeah, Anthony, you're wrong. To me, this will always be Reprise Records. Reprise just made more sense. What is the word reprise? Reprise Records, Jimi Hendrix, Smash Hits. My first delvage into rock. Fantastic. Now, the next album I'm going to show is another band that I got, or artist that I got heavily into because of this album. And you will see, because I'm wearing the Santana hat and Santana concert shirt. Next album I'm going to show you is Santana. And this album would start me on a long road of loving music of Santana. Now, I don't have the original record that I had back in the day, because I've upgraded over the years, and this is Santana. Debut album, Santana, and as you can see, this is a original master recording version of the album. Original master recording of Santana, and this album, especially the songs, you would know this album for Evil Ways. To me, my favorite song and Soul Sacrifice from, of course, Woodstock. For me, and I got this album in 1972, not this album, but the original I had of this, which I've had this album in so many versions. I've had this on 8-track tape, I've had it on cassette, I've had it on LP, CD, and of course now this original master recording. And that's Santana. But I love this album for the song Treat. And it was because of Santana that I started playing guitar. I wanted to play like Carlos Santana. And he's definitely influenced the way I play guitar. And as I showed in my room tour, I have a Santana PRS guitar. So there you go. That is Santana. Thank you, Santana, for enriching my life with your music. Okay, now one of the next things I got back in those days, where, like I said, I can't tell you exactly when I got these, but most of them were 72, 73. Nights in White Satin, Days of Future Past, Moody Blues on Durham Records. This is my original copy. 1970 copy, this one. And another one bought because I loved my James Bond album so much that I loved, just like Tom Jones and Thunderball, I liked Nancy Sinatra singing You Only Live Twice. So, what did I buy? Nancy Sinatra's Greatest Hits, which featured a different version of You Only Live Twice. I'd bought it thinking, oh good, it's got You Only Live Twice, she's a great singer. What else does she sing? And on the radio, These Boots Were Made for Walking was big. So yeah, also on Reprise Records, Nancy Sinatra, Greatest Hits. I was all over the place when I was a kid. I was experimenting with everything. Most kids, you know, they were listening to rock and roll and this and that. I was trying everything, and maybe that's why to this day I love all forms of music. And I listen to all forms of music because I didn't just listen to rock, I listened to everything. So there you go, Nancy Sinatra. Next thing I got. Beatles. Because I could not afford to buy every Beatles album out there, and they'd already broken up when I'd started getting into music. Because I couldn't afford to buy every type of Beatles album out there, I went for this. This one, and this one. Yeah, Beatles, 1962 to 66. I don't need to show the inside. You've all seen this album a million times before. But this, and these are my original versions from back in the day, and this, 67, 70. These are the ones I bought back in 72, and I've kept them, you know, they're like still in great condition. This basically was the only way I could, this gave me the whole Beatles library, or at least the best of the Beatles library, without having to buy a billion albums. So there you go. Those. Now the next one I'm going to show you, this wasn't the first one I got by this artist, and there's a reason I'm showing you these ones first. This isn't the first one I got by this artist. It's later down in the pile, but this artist, as I showed you before, School's Out by Alice Cooper, my first 45, became a big Alice Cooper fan, and of course right away started buying Alice Cooper albums. It was 1973, the first Alice Cooper album I bought. You'll see a little later, but then after buying that album I went back and found this one day in a record store, and it was Alice Cooper, Killer. And this is the original version that I had. I'm just going to pull this out of this here, because I put it in that. I used to buy these. I don't use these anymore. I now use vinyl storage solutions. But this is the original Killer I had. And you don't see this shown too much. As you can see, it's on the green. It's on the green. And this one has the original calendar that came in the album. And I never tore this calendar out. And my parents probably would have never let me put it on the wall anyhow. But this is the original calendar. This is my original Alice Cooper Killer. Then later towards the end of 1973, because I'm cutting it off at 1973, because 74, 75, 76, I went crazy buying music. One of the last ones I got in 1973 was this one here. And I still have the original Alice Cooper, Muscle of Love. Came in a, you know, this is a second time I got this, because the first one got wrecked. I got wrecked at a friend's house a couple of years later in a party. But I managed to score one, because they were still fairly in a large quantity. I managed to find one in a delete bin, hence the saw mark, because that was the sign of deleting. But this one has everything in it, and it's only a couple of years later than the one I bought. So they came, it came in a cardboard box. It's crazy packaging. It came with and I remember it came with a thing, and you were supposed to put this around your notebook. It was like one of those covers to put over notebook covers to protect your notebook. And of course then it had the sleeve, and was on the Warner label. On the Warner label. So there you go, Alice Cooper, Muscle of Love, one of my first albums. Another one, Rick Derringer, All American Boy. Loved this album, loved this album. It was a great album. also 1973. And this was famous for Teenage Love Affair was a big hit, but here in Canada, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, massive hit. I did have the 45 a long time ago. I don't know whatever happened to it, but I had to get this in LP because 45s back in the day, of course, they edited out guitar solos. They shortened songs. So I got this because I had to have the full version of Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Rick Derringer, All American Boy. Classic album. Next, 1973 again. And this is kind of probably my first prog album. I think this qualifies as prog. Though we didn't call any of that prog back then. It was all rock and roll. Just rock. It wasn't classical rock. It wasn't progressive rock. It was rock. And it was this album, Focus, Moving Waves. Loved this album. The whole second side was a song called Eruption. Absolutely mind-blowing guitar solo in the middle of it. Jan Ackerman, incredible guitarist. And I bought this because of the single Hocus Pocus, which had the yodeling in it. And I did have that on single somewhere, another one of my 45s long gone. But Focus, Moving Waves, and of course the Hocus Pocus that was on the album was double the length of the single. A classic, probably one of the greatest instrumental rock songs from the 70s, Hocus Pocus by Focus. Which was recently, you probably heard recently in the movie Baby Driver. Hocus Pocus by Focus. Now, I talked about this earlier, that I got the single in 1973. And it inspired me to buy the album because I loved the single so much and I wanted it. Once again, this was a single that was only half the length of the album version. Golden Earring, Moontan. Yeah, Golden Earring, Moontan. This is my original 1973 copy. And it's on the MCA Rainbow label. So there you go. And this had Radar Love, Candy's Going Bad, Vanilla Queen. And interestingly enough, for those that don't know, this had a completely different track order than the original version, European version of Moontan. In fact, one song on here, Big Tree Blue Sea, was never released on the Moontan in Europe. And the version of Big Tree Blue Sea that's on here was released on a previous Golden Earring album. But the version of that song released on that album was completely different. So the only place you can get this version of Big Tree Blue Sea was on this record here. So Golden Earring, Moontan. I'm going to show you the original version of Moontan in a few minutes. But that started my love affair with Golden Earring. And 26 studio albums and multiple live albums later, I still absolutely one of my all-time top 3 favorite bands of all time. Another one I picked up. I remember this was a Hudson Bay one. Yeah, Kinks Greatest Hits, 1970, 71, something like that version. I think it's 70. Kinks Greatest Hits, best known for Well Respected Man, Tired of Waiting for You, All Day and All of the Night, and of course, the song that everybody knows that Van Halen made famous again years later, You Really Got Me. Kinks Greatest Hits. Another band that I got this album, I remember it was a friend of my father's who said, oh, I got some records that he wanted to give to me. He gave them to my dad to give to me because I don't remember how this fellow got the records, but it was like they weren't his type of music. So I gave them to my dad because he knew his son was getting into rock and roll, and he says, your son will probably like this music. And I'd never heard of this band at all. Sladist. This was a best of album. Had, Shapes of Things to Come, Know Who You Are, One Way Hotel, Cause I Love You, Get Down, Get With It, Look What You Done, Take Me Back Home, and Mama, We're All Crazy Now, which, of course, and the last one that you will know very well, Squeeze Me, Please Me, another one. And, of course, this one, which was another song that was made famous by Quiet Riot in the 80s. Come On, Feel the Noise, the original classic Slade version. And this was Sladist on Polydor Records. And it was one of these inner things here. Came with a book, I believe. It came with a book. Do I have to? Yeah, and I kept, see, it came with a little book here. I told all about it. And yeah, that's my Sladist, and I love this album. I knew nothing about this band until I was given this album. Sladist by Slade. Best of package. Fantastic album. And as you can see, these, been to a few parties. Been to a few parties in friends' houses. Hence, scuffed up. Back in the day, we didn't have record protectors. So, it was really hard to protect your record album because they didn't sell record protectors really in 71, 72 because nobody used them. So, it's the latest. Next up, I'm going to try to get through these a little quicker. Another one, Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill. Loved this album, of course, for Do It Again, and the one that really just grabbed me, Reeling in the Years. And this is my original, Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill. And again, these covers were so popular back then where you had to get the record out from the inside. You had to open the gatefold to get the record out, and that was on ABC Records. And that's my original Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill. Next up, and I wish I could get a better copy of this album. I keep watching for it in the wild because mine is just beat to rat poop. But it still plays good. I mean, the vinyl still sounds great. It's just the cover got beat all to hell. And it's Steppenwolf Gold, their greatest hits. And crazy cover. And it's a classic. Of course, Born to Be Wild, The Pusher, Magic Carpet Ride, Sucky Sucky, Rock Me, Hey Lottie Marada, Move Over, Who Needs Ya? An absolute classic, Steppenwolf Gold. One day, if I could find a better copy of this cover, that would be great. Okay, next, my introduction to The Who. Also from, I think I got this in 1973 as well. This was a reissue at the time, and this is on the Rainbow, once again on the Rainbow MCA label. The Who by Tommy. I don't think I need to say much about it. Everybody knows Tommy by The Who. Edgar Winter, They Only Come Out at Night. Definitely one of the first 5 or 10 albums I ever owned in my entire life. And it was on Epic Records, known for, I think this is I can't remember if this is the second copy I got of it or it is the first, but it is definitely one of the first 10 records I ever owned in my life. This, I think, is actually another copy I got after the first one got unplayable. Known for Free Ride, and of course, one of the greatest, just like Hocus Pocus, one of the all-time greatest instrumental rock songs ever recorded, Frankenstein. So yeah, fantastic album. The last little pile here are all reissues and remasters that I bought since then, even very, very recently. But these are also albums I owned back then, that I originally had back then, that are all part of my first records I ever owned. So this is a reissue of Live and Let Die, James Bond. So because I love Diamonds Are Forever, of course, 1973, Live and Let Die came out. Paul McCartney doing the theme song. Being a kid, loving this movie. So obviously I jumped ahead and got Live and Let Die in 1973. This is a modern reissue of it. My original one, long gone. Wore the grooves out of that thing. I played that album so much. There you are, Live and Let Die, and this was not done by John Barry. Music was done by George Martin on this album, and this is a great spin. This is a great spin. James Bond had soundtracks that you could listen to. Some soundtracks you listen to and the incidental music makes no sense without watching the movie. But James Bond albums, you could listen to them and they made sense without seeing scenes to follow the music. Live and Let Die. I originally had the first version of this, 1973. Yeah, now I was around. I'm this old. Yes, I am this old. But I originally had, and I've had multiple pressings of this album over the years that have all gone by the wayside. I've had different versions on CD, had it on 8-track tape, had it on cassette tape, and this is my current version of the album, which is the latest release and remaster of this album. But yes, I was around when this album came out and bought this album when it was on the it was in the top 30 and had just been released. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. This is the latest issue, and as far as I'm concerned, probably the best pressing that's ever been done of the album. But yeah, I had an original first pressing, Canadian pressing of this album back in the day. I don't need to show you much from here. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Introduced me to Pink Floyd. Now, like I talked about earlier, Alice Cooper, School's Out was not, Muscle of Love, School's Out was a singles, Killer and Muscle of Love I got after this album. And I still do have the original version of this album that I bought back in the day, but I'm not going to show that one. I'm going to show my latest version of this album because I do have a couple pressings of this album. And it was Billion Dollar Babies by Alice Cooper. This was my first Alice Cooper album I owned, and probably one of my all-time favorite albums ever, 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 ever. This is a recent Rocktober from a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, Rocktober limited edition, an extremely valuable on Discogs version of this album. And I had to have it. I still have my original, which of course had the, for those that don't ever know, the whole thing was a wallet. It was supposed to be a snakeskin wallet. And I can, you know, maybe one day I'll pull out my original version, but this one just looks better. So it was a snakeskin wallet, and the idea is it had these cards, which are punch-outable. These punch out. They were supposed to be like wallet cards, you know, that you slide into little picture spots on your wallet. Behind there is credits and notes and credits and whatnot, but you had to remove this to see them. And like my other one, I removed them. But you could see the credits and whatnot for the album were in behind this. These were all punched out, and you could keep them as wallet cards. And of course, it came with the famous Alice Cooper $1 billion bill. I wish I could catch this in it today. But this is a faithful recreation that came out for Rocktober. Faithful, has everything, perfect recreation of the original $1 Billion Babies album. But the thing that I love about this version, why I'm showing this version, is it's on this fantastic green marbled, gold green marbled to match the cover pressing. Fabulous pressing. Sounds great. So there you go. My first Alice Cooper album, circa 1973, $1 Billion Babies. We're almost through, folks. We're almost through. One of the first albums I ever owned in my life. This was my first, after the Hush single, this was my first album I ever owned from Deep Purple. Deep Purple and Rock. Oh, Speed King, Child in Time, Bloodsucker, Hard Lovin' Man or Woman. Oh, one of the best freaking rock albums ever, I tell you. Deep Purple in Rock, fantastic. And of course I followed that right up with Machine Head, Smoke on the Water, Lazy, Truckin', Space Truckin'. And I had, you know, like I said, back in the day, 1973, I had the original version of this. This is a modern reissue, repress. This is the original version. Now, this is a modern repress, a music on vinyl repress from 2012. This is the original Golden Earring Moontan cover. And the reason why this was never released here is because you couldn't release covers like that here in Canada. This is the original Golden Earring Moontan as it was. And the two tracks that were different were Just Like Vince Taylor and what was the other song? Bear with me. Susie Lunacy. And Just Like Vince Taylor. Just Like Vince Taylor ended up being a B-side here in Canada of the single of Radar Love. It was never released here, so those two songs were replaced by Big Street Blue Sea here in Canada. But that is what the original Golden Earring Moontan looked like. I won't show you the inside cover because it's got a guy's naked butt. So, but there you go. Another band I discovered back in 1973 was Nazareth, Loud and Proud. 1973, this is a modern music on vinyl reissue. Great sounding reissue. And of course, this was famous for their big hit, This Flight Tonight, the Joni Mitchell song. But this whole album was fantastic. Go Down Fighting, Not Faking It, Turn on Your Receiver, Freewheeler, This Flight Tonight, Ballad of Hollis Brown, Child in the Sun. Just an absolutely spectacular album by Nazareth. Great rock and roll. Scottish band, of course. And this would start me on following Nazareth. Another one of probably my top 10 bands of all time. This would, I would follow Nazareth all through the years. So there's Nazareth, Loud and Proud. I originally owned that in 1973. And when I got that, I quickly followed that up by going back into their previous album, Razamanaz. And I actually, my first boat I ever owned, which was a little 9-foot runabout, I named Razamanaz. And I actually drew the lightning bolt, painted the lightning bolt on the transom of the boat, and wrote Razamanaz in the same way. And it was my first boat I ever owned, was called Razamanaz. And this is a modern back in black repressing of it on a fabulous, fabulous white vinyl. Razamanaz, famous for, of course, Razamanaz. And Night Woman, Vigilante Man, Woke Up This Morning. Just an all-around fantastic, fantastic, fantastic album. Highly recommend this album. This preceded Loud and Proud in 1972. And because I loved Loud and Proud, I went right away and bought Razamanaz. Last but not least in the pile, I got, like I said, with The Who earlier. I got into The Who with Tommy, but of course, also in that year, I had this album originally on 8-track tape. Yes, 8-track tape. 8-track tape, which I quickly asked my parents to get me for Christmas. I remember this Christmas 1973, I got this album. And that one's since gone, and I picked this one up last year, this repress up last year. And it is, of course, Who's Next? The Who, Baba O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again, Behind Blue Eyes. A must-have in anybody's record collection. The Who, Who's Next? Like I said, this is one I picked up, a Sunrise Records release last year, and it's got the original track record label on it. Look at that, fabulous. And it's on this gorgeous blue, and that's really nice. And that is it. Those are pretty much the first albums I ever owned in my life. I hope you enjoyed this. Please remember to like this video. I would really appreciate it. I'd love to hear your comments on how to make my channel better, how to make my videos better. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I want to keep doing this for as long as possible. Got lots to show you. So please like and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram, AGK_lifetime of vinyl. That's my Instagram, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now.